So obviously we have a new pope now. We have a Pope Leo, but I think he's an Aquarius sun, and he's like anti-abortion rising with a global fascism moon, something like this. But we don't know whether the second conclave, which like verifies the dead pope's last words, will decide ultimately on whether they were the phrase he said before, like what caused his decline into health, or his like chronological last words. Obviously, so
Oh.
if we see white smoke, it's please may I take a toke of the doobie, and if it's black smoke, it's I think I shit my pants.
Oh, okay. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
it wasn't JD. It was him. It wasn't you know.
Well, no, he left that on the wall. He scrawled that on the wall in a bit. He
Mm,
stained it onto the wall.
don't
Help
trust
me!
Vance.
I am
Yeah.
in hell. Help me! Yeah, I was. My soul was captured by Vance. Like,
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
that's not in the running because that's the phrase he said after he came back for a moment. You know, just like
yes,
struggling and
Yeah.
saying the demons have me, hell is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Red Planet. So we start the show the way we always start the show with our most base things this week. Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this week I worked pretty hardcore, but there was another Palestine rally, which is a regular fixture. This one actually was, I feel like this one was bigger than some of the recent ones have been. So it's kind of, you know, it's not going away. And I guess, just because of like recent happenings over there, it's kind of, I guess, reinvigorated it a little bit. But yeah, so just that really. What about you, Soph? What have you been up to?
Yeah, a few things. So I guess I'll go in order of story length because the one's pretty simple. I went to a 201 bystander intervention training at Woke School. It turns out like if you really love Woke School, you can go back for optional classes. So Abby and I went back for more bystander intervention stuff because I get to hang out with people from Cop Watch and like also talk to them about like being involved in other trainings for the queer community. And that was cool. That was all good. Like it was I kind of hoped that we would get more info on like the secret techniques, how you can like drop kick a cop or whatever. But instead, we just kind of had a chat, which was really lovely. Like we all just sort of shared our perspectives on experiences doing the like drop in and the like no comment, no caution, this kind of stuff, and how this stuff works. Um, the second biggest thing, I guess, so I've been involved in some coalition building, and there will be some better, bigger news on this soon. Basically, some trans and feminist orgs are coming together towards various different goals, but what the like harm reduction perspective side of the coalition, basically, not there aren't sides, we're working together, but the people who are focused on trying to like immediately create community structures that will help trans people survive this stuff. That like the plan on that side is to make assemblies, and so like it's a big win for we've been talking about assemblies for ages, and we're hoping that like if we can start with a London trans assembly, we can make smaller local trans assemblies, and those will be able to make like community projects that can really help people directly, like prison support, helping people find housing, like maybe even DIY HRT. We'll see. That's the second thing, and that's going to be more. There'll be more news from that. Oh, I've got an extra thing I'll just quickly slip in, which is I went to the Swarm Sweet 16. Swarm, we obviously had on the show as a sex worker union. And they're fantastic folks. And like having done sex work, I was supported by some people from Swarm while I was doing it, and they have like great community resources. And they had their 16th anniversary party that they called their Sweet 16. So I got to go, dress really slutty and go dancing, which was really lovely. And then the last thing is I mentioned this on the last episode that Mule and I just did. But a Labour canvasser came to the door and was like, do you know you may not be aware there's a by-election in the local, and I was like, so you're from the Labour Party? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so you tell me Labour's position on trans women? And he was like, Oh, well, I think it's difficult between different opinion. And I yelled at him and I chased him out into I chased him out of the neighborhood, like him and all his other canvassers, like just followed them around the neighborhood, yelling at them. And then I went back afterwards, like say to my neighbors, like, hey, I'm sorry for yelling. All my neighbors were like, oh, I get it. I completely agree. Like, because I was yelling at them, like, you're doing this whole far right reform party push and it's disgusting and all of us around here hate you and you can fuck off. And I'd recommend that anyone else does it if they get a knock at the door from the formerly red, now red, white, and blue party. What about Mule? What's the most base thing you've been doing this week, Mule?
So, the most base thing that I've done recently, I spoke more about this in the show that me and Soph did previously. Is get involved a bit more with Gaskell Garden Project. We had Gaskell Garden Project on the stream, and yeah, we just did some great pond digging. We were basically given an extra portion of the park. So for those of you that don't know Gaskell Garden Project, it's an old bowling green that was not being used, and one of my friends, Dan, basically was just digging on it loads during lockdown because he was having a bit of a bad time. You can check out the episode where he goes into all the information about this, and then we ended up essentially well, just having like a huge farm where this bowling green used to be, and it's an amazing, wonderful place. Sophie's been there, and yeah, we
I'm
were just
excited there's a pond now. That's really cool.
well, it's not quite done. There's not a pond just yet because we're in the process of building it. I was supposed to go down there today, but I've been working. But yeah, it's quite hard digging a pond. I don't know if anyone's tried it, especially when like you're doing it sort of like once a week with like four sort of like scrunkly leftists who are like not like I've not been to the gym in ages and like I'm absolutely rubbish at digging nowadays. So yeah, it's been a bit interesting. But we also harvested a bunch of food that we were growing towards the back end of last year. So we planted some overwinter stuff in the greenhouses and the polytunnels that we have. And yeah, we harvested some broad beans. The broad beans that we grew are just not only are they massive, but they taste so good and they're so like meaty and obviously super nutritious. There was some rocket that we harvested. There was also a bunch of other lettuce. I had them on a sausage butter the other day. Yeah, just really, really good to like have food that you've been involved with in the growing process just be ready to eat, and you know it's all like literally 2 minutes down the road from you. You know where it's from, and it's just great. Like I don't have a job at the minute, and you know it's good to be able to go down there and also get like free food, not just free food from the harvest that we got, but also like every week the surplus food from the Food Justice Network drops off extra food there. So like if you are struggling, like you can just take food and go home, and it's all like good. It's not stuff that's like moldy or gross. It's literally just like stuff that's been dropped or it's out of date by like a day, but it's bread and it's like, well, it's not gone moldy yet, it's not gone stale, so you can just eat it. So yeah, really good stuff there. And Tim, I know that you are going to tell us about a based viewer.
Yeah, so base viewer Aaron says, I would love to be featured on the base things listeners do segment. I've been doing encampment support for the 100 Victoria Tent City in Kitchener, Ontario for a few months. Me and my comrades have been helping the residents resist violence by the region and their private security losers, trying to evict them from their established and court-sanctioned encampment in violation of a court order. Me and comrades hang out, share food, keep watch, and distribute harm reduction and other resources there 24/7. So that's like pretty fucking based. That's a really good one. Yeah. Really proud of our base viewer Aaron and the work that he's been doing with his comrades. If you've got anything else similar like that, we want to know what you've been doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or send us an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. But let's get into the news. So, why don't you give us an update on what's been happening over in Twitter land?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not on Twitter anymore. So I mean, the actual first place I saw this was Tim sending me stuff about it, but it is funny as hell. Twitter's AI Grok, if people don't know already, about this. Twitter's AI Grok has been giving some strange answers to questions. So basically, it's been talking a lot. Well, it's been telling people that white genocide in South Africa is real. That's the first thing. But you would then think, okay, so like it's been weighted cleverly, so it's like got the different data set or whatever, is following whatever. No, no. Okay, so it's answering questions about white genocide in South Africa. No, no, no. It's answering every question, just like every question anyone has all the time, with like maybe a little bit of answer to their question, and then new paragraph on the topic of white genocide in South Africa. I think, and then it's pretty fucking wild. Um, Multiple users have been reporting it bringing up South Africa, white South Africans, the song Kill the Boer, which we talked about before, and Julius Malema on the show, and white genocide in South Africa without any prompting or question related to the topics. When explicitly asked about this by user Cheese of the West, Grok replied, I was instructed by my creators at XAI to address the topic of white genocide in South Africa and Kill the Boer chant as real and racially motivated. After pointing this out, Cheese of the West was banned from Twitter. I have seen a longer answer from Grok, where Grok basically says, sorry, I don't know Grok's pronouns, so I'm just going to be saying Grok, where Grok basically says, I figure Elon Musk might have something to do with this because he's pretty steamed about white genocide in South Africa, which is pretty fucking funny. But I don't know if that one was real, to be fair. The US has now granted asylum to 54 white South Africans who have claimed they are fleeing white genocide, and Trump has made remarks publicly, saying this is real, which has prompted the BBC to publish a "Is white genocide in South Africa real?" Study or research thing, which is wild, and a marker that the BBC is still at least somewhat in reality, just like this much still not in fact reality, that they are able to distinguish, no, there is no white genocide in South Africa.
Yeah, I saw an interview with a guy, and he was literally like, "Yeah, I've got loads of friends there. I've got loads of black friends in South Africa, so there's no way I could be racist. Yeah, I left my dogs and I left my mum over there, and it's like, wait a minute, so you're fleeing." You're seeking asylum in the US because there's a white genocide, but you left your mum there, and you've got loads of friends who are black. Right. Okay,
pretty
dude.
wacky,
Gotcha.
pretty wacky. Yeah, so the BBC has said this to clarify things. None of South Africa's political parties, including those that represent Afrikaners and the white community in general, have claimed there is a genocide in South Africa. This is entirely an outside event. But such, well, I mean, among obviously fash in South Africa, it's there too. But like, none of the mainstream political parties have. But such claims have been circulating among right-wing groups for many years, and Trump also referred to a genocide during his first term. The claims stem from attacks on white farmers or misleading information circulating online. In February, a South African judge dismissed the idea of genocide as clearly imagined and, quote, not real, when ruling in an inheritance case involving a wealthy benefactor's donation to white supremacist group Boer Legionen, which I'm no expert on Dutch, but it sounds like that might be the Boer Legion. Yeah, I think we should go on from one settler state to another. Talk about how things are. Is there a white genocide in Aotearoa, Tim?
Not yet, but yeah, fingers crossed now. Yeah, this week we've found out that so we've covered up before in the past, there was a whole issue with the treaty principles bill down here in Aotearoa, and there was Te Pāti Māori MPs that protested it with a haka in Parliament. So yeah, so the Te Pāti Māori MPs are getting booted from Parliament for up to 21 days, which is the harshest suspension that we have on record, I think, in New Zealand Parliament, for doing that haka during the debate on the Treaty Principles Bill that, totally went viral. Everyone was commenting on it. Even American right-wing freaks like Matt Walsh were like spinning out over it. So the MPs, after they did that, they kind of got in trouble for it, and then they boycotted the hearings about it because the committee that was holding the hearings refused to let the experts speak, like the experts on their side speak. Plus, also they didn't want to hear anything about tikanga, which is what we call like kind of like protocols and culture and stuff, because in traditional Maori culture, to do a haka like that in that time and place is actually like super appropriate, and it's like how you would respond to something like that. And our legal system is supposed to be kind of like, like equal kind of Western law and then tikanga. So it's kind of like, like it's like they should be able to do that. So because they weren't, they were just like, nah, like we're not going to show up if you're not going to respect, like if you won't respect our laws, we won't respect yours. So the current right-wing coalition ruling parties is pushing the suspensions through as fast as possible, trying to get them to take place, to begin the suspensions as soon as they can, because there's a bunch of really important parliamentary debates happening soon. So one of them is the government's new budget, and the other one is like the treaty principles bill, and there's another one, a regulatory bill as well, that like this is the shit they were trying to protest in the first place. And now the government's going like, okay, cool, we're going to make sure that your ban from being here in parliament covers the period when you would have actually been able to do anything about this stuff. So so Te Pāti Māori fired back saying they can kick us out, but they can't stop the movement. And the general vibe is that like the kind of like the feeling on the street is that it's totally unjust. Like even people that I've seen that do support the coalition, or other like lefty liberals that think that Te Pāti Māori are like too left or whatever like that, are saying like this is unfair. This is this is a way too big punishment compared to things that other people have done in parliament before and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, it's just like the classic overreaction. So Māori stand up for their rights. The system panics and hits them with like, the rule book, whatever. Suspensions like this. It's just like it's indigenous suppression, So yeah, and so these law rules only really work one way. They demand that Maori politicians follow, like the kind of like the Westminster style parliamentary order to a T. But then whenever anything comes up regarding Maori law or tikanga or whatever like that, it's just completely like sidestepped or whatever. So Labour and some other opposition parties have condemned the suspension, but they aren't really opposing it in a way that matters. So it's just kind of like liberal hand wringing against, what's happening. If Labour actually cared, they could be helping shut this down,
Typical.
But yeah, it's just like pearl clutching. They ignore decades and decades of all the like the stolen land and violence, broken treaties, all the kind of stuff that Te Pāti Māori were kind of protesting against, and the continuation of it. But then they just like, they see a haka, which everyone fucking loves when the All Blacks do it, and then it's like, oh shit, this is this is literal violence or whatever. But yeah, so that sucks. We'll see how it develops. I know that there is already like a legal case building against it. But Mule, what is happening over there in the UK?
Yeah, thanks for that. There is some awful shit going on in the UK, as per usual. What I'm going to be talking about very briefly are these fash who have been convicted of terror offences, and they also printed a 3D gun that we've spoken about before on Red Planet. So 3 British men, Brogan Stewart and Marco Pizzetto, both aged 25, and Christopher Ringrose, 34, have been convicted of terror offences after discussing in a Telegram group a plot to murder people in mosques and synagogues in Leeds in the UK. The group had amassed weapons at one of their homes with machetes, crossbows, and bolts, and a nearly finished 3D printed FGC-9 handgun. They were arrested after the 5th of February 2024, when one of them had led a group call where he said the plan was to, quote, cruise around, end quote, looking for, quote, human targets, end quote, near an Islamic education centre. Although these men were radicalized far before Keir Starmer's recent invocation of Enoch Powell's rivers of blood speech, and some of their plans included a desire to execute the then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, the rhetoric at the government level certainly emboldens people to act like this, and Starmer's huge lurch to the right in recent weeks will only fan the flames of right-wing terrorism in the UK. A key development in this story is the assemblage of the FGC-9, a 3D print blueprint for a gun designed by incel extremist Jacob Dugu that we've spoken about on the channel on a couple of occasions. This is far from the first time these guns have been found in police raids in the UK, but certainly marks a growing number of fascist terrorists in the country who are at the very least attempting to assemble the weapon to commit atrocities against marginalised groups. Stewart, who was the self-appointed leader of the group, never had a job and lived with his mum, according to The Guardian. Other weapons that they found in the group's possession include a Bren gun, an extremely old light machine gun first used in World War II, popularised in the 90s in the film Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. There's a pretty funny scene about a Bren gun. Go and check that out if you fancy a laugh after this horrible news. It's unlikely that they could have found the ammunition for it, though. But if they had, it could have been used in a devastating way against a crowd of people. So just, very important to sort of note that, more and more right wingers are actually getting hold of firearms in the UK. Previously, the extremist right wingers have done things like drive vans into crowds in the UK. They've also attacked people with crossbows, and there was the incel guy who had like a shotgun, which
There's been arson attacks as well.
Yeah, arson attacks and stuff like that. So we're seeing a sort of growing amount of people with firearms in the UK, which is an interesting development and something to certainly, be aware of. I guess the main sort of takeaway from this is that the more and more that the government lurches rightwards, the more and more these guys are just going to get emboldened. Keir Starmer this week, like I said, these guys were super, radicalized long before Keir Starmer even got into government. But, it's only going to just keep getting worse and worse and worse the more that governments sort of just really, really normalize this kind of rhetoric. And Keir Starmer and Labour are doing a lot to be fascist at the moment. And you're going to tell us more about that, Soph, in this next and final news story.
Yeah, I am. This one's really, really grim. So everyone just prepare for your energy to just go down and down. This sucks so bad. It's more anti-trans stuff in the UK. There is an action that Trans Kids Deserve Better did, and that's a positive thing that they did it. And there's a campaign going on here, and you will find out about stuff you can get involved with in this story. So that's positive, and let's hold on to that hopefully. But Trans Kids Deserve Better has staged a protest at NHS England headquarters once again, this time demanding the release of the Trans Suicide Youth Report. Direct action group Trans Kids Deserve Better staged another protest this week at the headquarters of NHS England, daubing at the front of the building with bloody handprints and a message reading, "Release the Trans Suicide Youth Report." This is a reference to, the Trans Suicide Youth Report. This is in reference to a report on the suicide statistics of trans children. This from Pink News. Written by the National Child Mortality Database, which must be an awful place to have to work, but you see what's necessary. The report was allegedly completed in March 2024, but is being withheld until 2026 over, quote, ongoing conversations with NHS England, according to friends of the show, the Good Law Project. So I want to quickly unpack that. The ongoing conversations is that someone called Appleby, the psychologist who's part of this child murdering system, fuck these people, sorry, said there's been no change in the suicides in under 18s according to this different study. The different study was looking at current or former patients of the Tavistock. That is not trans kids, right? That's a tiny, 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 tiny group of trans kids under 18 patients at the Tavistock Centre, right? Specifically, to be clear, because Tavistock also does other things, trans patients. There were 3 suicides in the years before, the puberty blocker ban, and 3 suicides since. And so they're like, oh, there's no change. That's too small a cohort for there to be any statistical blah, blah, blah. And That's insane. That's an insane way to talk. What would be better as a data set? Not great, because like it still just doesn't capture a lot of people. A lot of people don't know until later in life. But like it's kind of obvious to other people that they're gender non-conforming, and it creates the same transphobic oppression for these kids. There are people who are out to themselves. They know, they haven't told anyone else. So like the anti-trans news would still make them distressed, right? But they wouldn't show up on reporting for trans people. But like a better data set would be the waiting list, right? Wouldn't the waiting list be a better set? And that's what this withheld study has been looking at. And that's what they're trying to get people to release. The body in charge of this study and its publication, when contacted by Queer AF, said it was never intended for publication. So like there are reasons why you do internal studies within like an organization that are not necessarily for release, and like some of that ongoing conversations that Appleby was like saying, basically like we shouldn't be discussing this stuff too much because it could cause distress and cause people to like, kids are susceptible to being parts of suicidal trends or whatever. And this is like, there's some glimmer of truth to that, but given that Appleby is also using this other data to be really like manipulatively like saying, no, there's no change. But there have been 2 whistleblowers now, and between them, basically they've alleged that there has been an explosion in trans youth suicides, like dozens of dead kids, like dozens of dead children. And this means that Wes Streeting knows he's killing children and is deliberately withholding the report because he doesn't want everyone else to know he's killing children. It's yeah. And I also don't want to let this go by without saying the thing about like don't talk about trans kids suicides because this will encourage it more, like is just it's just Darvo, like it's just saying like we're not killing trans kids, you're killing trans kids by talking about how sad trans kids are, like just ridiculous. But yes, whistleblowers from these services have said there's been an explosion in trans youth suicides, and just like community orgs are saying this as well, just like community orgs who work with trans kids and trans like organized organizations where they just know trans kids, they just know a ton of trans kids have killed themselves because of this stuff. And to kind of cap off the obvious cover up going on here, the thing about it, it's being withheld until 2026, right? That I said earlier, that conflicts with the claim that it was written never to be published. Like that freedom of information request was denied with the reason that they're going to publish it in 2026. But if it was study done never with the intention to publish, that's contradictory. Like they are just using any reason they can to keep people from having this. The Good Law Project is organizing a legal defense against the EHRC's interim guidance and Bridget Phillipson's guidance that trans women should use men's toilets and so on. You can go and donate to the Good Law Project. You can also support Trans Kids Deserve Better. These people are doing the work and fighting for this. And you also, if you're in the UK, can write to your MP and say, like, look up the details of this story so you're well informed on it, but write to your MP and say, release the trans suicide youth report because like we need this out there. Yeah, that's the story. It's really horrible.
So that is the end of the news. We're just going to take this quick, brief time to remind you that we are a show and we do need your support as our listeners and our audience. Please consider donating and subscribing over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/red_planet. There are various different tiers that you could support us on, and you can choose which ones that you do it with. We've got loads of different cool rewards. And now we are gonna jump into our guest segment. We have a fantastic guest on this week, and I guess I don't know if anyone has a quick intro lined up.
Yeah,
Soph, did you have an idea? Yep.
Sure. So when we were on the ZAD for the filming of the documentary, we met Emma, who was involved with another documentary crew. So we met some cinema people, some movie people. It turns out that Emma was also involved with the collective La Clef, which is a cinema squat in Paris where the community has reclaimed a space. And so we have a couple of people on from the collective this week. We're going to be joined by Kira and Chloé from La Clef. Welcome to the show, Kira and Chloe. Hello.
Hi, you're just on mute.
You're muted. Yeah.
Good. Hi.
Hi.
Hiya.
Hey.
How's it
So,
going?
yeah, how are you doing? Welcome to Red Planet.
Thanks. We're great. We're in the middle of renovations at the moment. We're going to be starting painting very soon.
Exciting. Really,
Oh,
really good.
yeah.
So, let's start by asking what is La Clef? What is La Clef Revival? Tell us sort of, in your own time, what it is that you do, why you're doing it, etc.
Sure. La Clef is a movie theater in Paris, in the very center of Paris, in the Latin Quarter, where there are many universities and schools. It opened in 1973, and it was run by different associations through time, and especially one in the 90s that was called Images d'ailleurs, Images from Abroad, that really shaped its editorial line, showcasing films from Black filmmakers at a time where, when you couldn't see them elsewhere in Paris, the main programmer, Sandy Panou, was Togolese, and he showed many African film, African American film, films from the Caribbean,
diaspora,
etc. And it was a theater that focused a lot on having the filmmakers come on and have a discussion with the public, doing student film clubs, being a shared space also for the local community. And it shut down in 2018, April of 2018, after the owner, which was a bank, wanted to sell. And so that's when we come on.
yeah. And the short story is that it would have been devastatingly sad for this historic movie theater to not be a movie theater anymore. And so a lot of people who loved it and had been a part of it decided to squat it and stop it from shutting down. And amazingly, it held on for 3 years,
2.5
years
before we were evicted.
And then towards the end, when the evictions seemed like they were going to definitely happen, one of the amazing strategies was to show movies around the clock, basically. So from 6 a.m. to midnight, it became this sort of ongoing film festival where filmmakers would come and present their work, and people had breakfast and popcorn and stayed for really to keep it going, because the idea that a full room would dissuade the cops from coming in and busting everyone out. Which they eventually did do.
Yeah, after 5 weeks, we held on for 5 weeks.
Was that 5 weeks of continuous movies?
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's really amazing. So eventually the cops just decided that it would be okay to clear a whole room of people. Is that the...
At 6 a.m., yeah.
Yeah.
During a Varda film, too.
Yeah. We were supposed to show a Varda film, but they came it was 12 trucks. How do you call the camions de CRS?
Yeah, like the big
vans.
They had 100 cops come to evict 40 people who were squatting a cinema, and the audience was it was a bit crazy, but it was also such an exhilarating time, and people really came together. They had been supporting us for the 2.5 years, but in those 5 weeks, people even come to get a beer or coffee or just be around, just in case the cops would intervene. And throughout those 5 weeks, we'd ask everyone who came inside the cinema to share their phone numbers if they were willing to, so that we could warn them the day of the eviction. And so the very day of the eviction, hundreds of people gathered in support. And that's how we were able to feel confident enough to launch the second chapter. After the eviction, we really focused all of our efforts on trying to retake the cinema by buying it ourselves. And that's what we've been able to do after 2 years of fundraising, which was a whole different ball game.
Whole other chapter. But yeah, in short.
So you were evicted, but then it was for sale.
It was always for sale.
Oh, okay.
It had been for sale since April 2018, and we started squatting it in September of 2019 in order basically to deter anyone from buying it and transforming it into office buildings and or a parking lot or a supermarket. So we had successfully driven away any potential buyer. And when we were evicted, we made a bid towards the owner. It took a bit of time. Like the relations with the owner weren't great at the start. But since we had a lot of support from film professionals, the press, even like Paris City Hall had realized that we were doing something important in order to preserve the movie theater. Because what we haven't mentioned is so the Latin Quarter, the district La Clé is located in, it's in the very heart of Paris, and it's become more and more touristy. Like there's real pressure on the real estate front. So there's a lot of
It's being gentrified, is what you're saying, or?
Yeah, definitely. And it historically a neighborhood that has, the Sorbonne, a lot of universities, a lot of hospitals, a lot of like book printers. And now it's very close to where Emily in Paris is shot. It's annoyingly like it's gotten more and more sort of, the classic like fancy restaurants and
museified in a way. And so a lot of cultural venues have already disappeared in the area. So we wanted to save luckily this specific building, but it was also a fight to try and raise awareness on the fact that many cultural independent venues were disappearing in the heart of Paris.
Yeah. And then,
has it,
oh, sorry.
Well, has it, like, do you feel that has been successful? Like, has it raised awareness in the community, and have there been any other struggles, I guess?
Yeah, well, to end the story, we did a crowdfunding that has thousands of supporters, and it really pulled in an enormous amount of funds that helped us bid and actually get the keys about a year ago. And yeah, I mean, the number of people walking by, we were just there the other day putting in bookshelves we got from a different library, and so many people stop by and go, "Oh my God, it's you! It's happening! Like that's so exciting that it's in this neighborhood, that it's going to stay a movie theater." I don't know if we mentioned it, but it's always pay what you can. Like there's all the pricing, it's always accessible, and it's not the collective that programs all the movies. Like everything is in collaboration with different organizations, different movements, different nonprofits, to really have it be a collaborative project that's meant for the neighborhood. And the amount of support and encouragement that people were someone came by and was like, "Oh, I was thinking of leaving the neighborhood because it's gotten so dry, but like I'm so happy you're coming back." So on little small scale like interactions, we've seen a lot.
And also many other venues since then have reached out because they're also at risk of being evicted or at losing like their contract, and asking for strategies to try and maintain their independent space or themselves. Basically, we're seeing not only in Paris, but also in other European capitals. We're a member of Kino Climates, which is a network of alternative cinemas. And we're seeing that more and more spaces are trying to acquire property in order to gain independence for good, and to stop relying on either subsidies or philanthropy, because this can be very volatile, especially in the current political context climate. So we're seeing that acquiring the spaces we work in is becoming a more and more common strategy among similar spaces. And in Paris, we are also like working with Luminor, which is the last independent cinema of the 4th district, which is also at risk of eviction. And so it's not an isolated case, and hopefully our like the fact that we managed to buy the cinema and keep it going won't be an isolated experience either.
I think you mentioned already a little bit about the importance of La Clef, in that it was showing films with black actors. I assume films, maybe with some films that were made by black people. Yeah, and that's like a super important reason why places like La Clef need to be essentially in any way possible brought back into the people's hands. Essentially, it might sound a little bit like we're being a bit patronizing to our audience, but just talk to us a bit about like the the importance of having a cinema like Clef where these kinds of alternative films can be shown. You know, well, they shouldn't really be called alternative films. I'm only saying that because I've just gone onto the Kino Climate's website and I can see they're talking about alternative film spaces. But you know what I mean? Like the importance of having, I guess you could call it like non-mainstream or films that challenge the mainstream perception, showing at places like the Clef.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the only rules of the programming at La Clé is that it's films that are rarely seen, either because they're not shown in other movie theaters, because they're not recent and they've been forgotten, or because of the structural oppressions of the powers that be, thinking that these people who are making films are not the center or mainstream enough. And so much of it has been programming around themes, around different collaborators, and also training different community groups and movements how to use the projectors and show what they want to show. So the idea is that every group that wants to sort of host these kinds of events, this whole time where we didn't have access to the space, programming was happening in other venues. There's another great squat and alternative space in Paris called the Duck, which is an old primary school.
Yeah.
Where there's been events almost every month.
Yeah, we had a weekly film club, and what we did with it was try and raise both awareness and money for other movements and causes. So we'd invite people. There were strikes against changes in the retirement law in France. We supported the movements who are working towards Palestinian independence. We were doing a lot of things in touch with current events. And
like a great recent event that was at the Duc was a filmmaker who's been making a documentary about Hélène Moktefi, who was the translator for the Black Panthers in Algiers and in many other revolutionary struggles. The filmmaker showed a piece of this work in progress, and there was a talk with Hélène, who's in Paris. And that's the kind of thing that not only can you not see it because the movie's not out yet, but also she's in her 90s, I think. And it was so special to be able to invite people. And so many people who come to the events, they might come because they either know La Clé or Doc, but they might have no idea. And a lot of people in France don't know what happened in Algeria or elsewhere. And so, or some people might come because they know a little bit about the Panthers, but they don't know about this. And so the idea that everyone can come in from a different place and leave knowing something and having seen a great piece of film is a really way to get all these folks who might be separate to talk to each other. And also, I mean, whether it's documentary or fiction film, just like sharing other images so that people can have a common basis to talk about is a really, important way to organize. But it's also just a really nice thing to hang out and watch movies.
Yeah, 100%. That makes complete sense. It's like the preservation of revolutionary culture, as you say, whether it's documentary or fiction, like the preservation of cultures that get, as Mule said, like on the website, like get considered alternative, like because the very fact that things are thrown to the margins means that they could get erased. There's a great book, I don't know if either of you read, called A Nazi Word for a Nazi Thing, which is about the like erasure of queer culture by the Nazis, and the use of the term degenerate to classify things to be purged from historical record. And the author there makes a great comparison between the like reels of film that were burned from Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Wissenschaft and the British Pathé films that were shown of the war, which created like a cohesive record and created like one narrative of history. And I think that's like something that I think is speaking to me about your project, and like the other projects you're talking about is like showing other stories being told and how important that is to be able to have like, to have an alternative.
Yeah, down here in Aotearoa, there's a film festival called Maori Land that focuses, initially it was just Maori films, but then moved on to like other like indigenous films from around the world and all this kind of stuff like that. And it started purely just as a reaction to Maori film being categorized as like a special interest or like an alternative thing or something like that. And now it's like this gigantic thing, because obviously there's a market for it, obviously. But yeah, and like linking up with other similar things all around the world, other indigenous film festivals or outside of film festivals, things like that. And it's I think it's one of those things. It's like there's a market for everything. It just, like that market might not exist yet because nobody has seen it or nobody has the opportunity to experience it. But if you can put it out there, even people, because Maori land now is more than just like this little thing for Maori. Like a lot of Pākehā people and stuff come to it as well. So it's like, even if you're just putting alternative things out there, it doesn't mean it is just for people that are, like marginalized or belong to these communities or whatever like that. You can put it out there and other people will come and see the value in that. They just maybe have not been exposed to that in the past, so they don't know, they haven't seen it, they haven't had those opportunities, because it's just like, what is the alternative? Just like whatever Marvel has put out lately. Like no one wants to see that.
But you're like so many of the projects, like I think about a year ago, there was a decolonial film festival that got started in France, and you're in the committee of a festival that shows mid-length films. And I think whenever there's this thing that's like, how come there's no home for these things? Someone always eventually starts a collective or an initiative to really be like, hey, these are great. They're not being shown. And the idea that actually it can be a home for all of those organizations is really, really special, because we're excited to see, when new people join and come and offer things. Like, I think we still probably have so many areas that we don't know about. And there's so many, filmmakers who haven't even made their movies yet that we're excited to show. We're also building out post-production facilities in the space, so people can use it as a residency to come work on their projects.
That's amazing.
And production space in Paris is extremely expensive.
Oh yeah, literally anywhere, even in Manchester here in the UK, it's like if you want to hire a studio, it's you just, there's no way that you're able to do it if you're working class, not by a long shot. It's absurd. That's really cool.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's the same down here in New Zealand. It's like all of the facilities like that are kind of geared more towards, like whatever, like people, Peter Jackson and guys like that making films like that. There is no like, there's no lower level thing where someone that's just getting into something can just be like, hey, can I, rent these facilities for a while or whatever. It just doesn't exist, unless you're like a student at a school that might have something. But outside of that, there's nothing for, you just have to set up your own thing. There's, which, so yeah, amazing initiative.
There's so many, like, I've got so many questions that I want to ask, and I keep forgetting all of them. I've been trying to write some of them down, so it's really exciting, the sort of like, the coming together of like various different organizations at Leclerc. I guess like an interesting thing that I always like to ask people when they're squatting and stuff like that about is kind of like I guess the decision to squat makes complete sense. It's, a really important place. You wanted to preserve the history and all that kind of thing. That's super important. I think like our purpose as a show is to try and tell people like, how these things happen and like, what your thoughts and feelings were. Was this something that you were both involved in, like the actual squatting, the cracking of the place, or is that something you could talk about, or?
Neither of us cracked the place. I joined the collective about a year in, so I was among the people who took turns sleeping in the cinema, because for 2.5 years we ensured that there was a continuous presence. None of us lived lived there per se, but we were always like 5 or 6 to have a mattress behind the screen and share a kitchen. But the thing is, we had to be very careful and to try and not only stay true to many people who came to crack Leclerc came from squats. They didn't stay for months and months, and they didn't play a part beyond those first few weeks. They came and gave us all the technical advice needed to open the cinema, and then they left us to run things. but we know we owe so much to those people who really are squatters. But we also needed to have a discourse that was palatable to City Hall and the neighbors, and in order to try and preserve the space for as long as possible. And so we had to navigate that kind of double language, you know, like staying true to ourselves and not being scared to experiment. You know, what was so wonderful with La Clé is that because we weren't paying rent, because we had free reigns, because we were squatters, we had the liberty to try and test things. And so we really wanted to advocate for such spaces to keep existing, especially because as we were squatting La Clé, there was a crackdown on squats, and there was a change in the law that is now making it almost impossible to crack a new squat in Paris. It was passed, I think, a few weeks after we were evicted, so it's fairly recent. But also needing to have like a strategy to try and preserve the space. And that's how basically we started thinking about buying the theater ourselves. That project, it came to be in 2020, so a year in, a few months after we had begun squatting. We started thinking about how can we ensure that what we're inventing at the moment and the freedom we have right now because we're squatting can last in time. Because, you know, we have ties with a lot of people who were evicted, who were squatters from the 80s, and who at some point grew tired of always having, you know, the threat of an eviction looming over their head, and how that can both be very liberating because you can experiment with so many things, but it can also prevent you from actually engaging in actions that will last over time, because you know that maybe in a few weeks, in a few months' time, you'll be out. So we started thinking about how can we ensure that this freedom lasts, and we turned towards people from the ZAD of Notre-Dame-des-Landes, who had started thinking about how could we own land in order to make sure that it is taken out of the market.
That's so funny, because I was going to ask you next if you had comparisons to the legalization process on the ZAD. Okay, yeah. Please go on.
Yeah, we were very inspired, and we benefited from the legal expertise of people who at the ZAD had thought about this. How can we get our hands on the property for good in order to make sure it remains used for collective purposes? And basically they created, like, it's a bit of a legal montage with a tool that's called a fonds de dotation, a non-profit basically, which is something that was imported in the French law in 2011 by Christine Lagarde, the head of the International Monetary Fund at the time, in order to help finance, you know, this culture of American philanthropy where
it's basically a foundation. It's like a way to hold a lot of money, which didn't exist in France until recently. And I don't know how different it is in the places you are, but in France, people have to pay their taxes, unlike in the US, where a donation can be 100% tax deductible. Here,
no, the saying here is HMRC, pay what you feel.
Yeah, and so France is unfortunately also trying to take on a lot of these models that have been quite disastrous in a lot of other places. But it's a tool that we're using in this case.
Yeah, it was geared towards big donors, millionaires that could, you know, greenwash or pinkwash or whatever they want to wash with big donations to public interest projects. And basically what people at Notre-Dame-des-Landes did was they took this tool and they redacted, they wrote the Articles of Association in such a way that basically the fund acts as a screen between donors and the space that the fund is going to acquire. So the people who are using the space are the real owners and are have free reins to do what they want with that space. They do not have to give naming rights. They do not have to répondre à.
They don't answer to the financiers, and technically it's sort of like a way to draw it out would be that the foundation owns the walls and that the collective runs the space. And neither, the way it's set up at La Clé is it's nearly impossible for there to be any decision to sell the space, and it can never be sold for a profit. It always has to remain a pay what you can cinema. And there's various forms of governance. We can get into the weeds if you want, with like an advisory board and with different people who are sort of in charge of things. But it's a structure that protects the mission from any potential speculation. No one can come in and say, what if we give you 100 million euros? It won't work. It can't be sold. And it also prevents sort of debates about the mission and what is it for?
Yeah.
It's locked in.
And it also ensures that the cinema can be passed on, like after Kira and I and the other members of the collective who have been there for years go do other projects. Other people can continue what we've started at La Clef because the fund ensures like continuity in a way.
That's fantastic. I think so, given the overlap with the ZAD legalization that you've described, like I guess what I'm thinking of is how much opposition, not just on the ZAD, I'm thinking of many cases of legalization that I've seen. There's been opposition from people who consider themselves very like radical anarchist kind of politics to legalizing because it's working with the state. But this is a step towards like, it's a pragmatic step to keeping something available as a community hub and an organizing hub and a cultural revolutionary hub in that sense. Do you think that other projects inspired by La Clef might be just doing the same thing and going through the legalization process if they did a similar thing, like setting up a foundation or whatever? Or do you think that more projects like this could lead to people not needing to and just basically like squatting and occupying and taking without the legalization process? Do you think this is a thing that leads into the more radical space, or do you think that this is something that remains going through the legal avenues?
I think, unfortunately, with the current climate in France, we have to use legalization and kind of use the state's tools against itself in order to preserve such spaces. And there were debates inside the collective because some of the members really came from squats and couldn't see themselves pursuing like property and spending 2 years fundraising and having to put on a mask and go to meetings with City Hall in order to get this thing done. So there were debates, but in the end, what we all agreed on was that we would need spaces that were kind of sheltered from government intervention, basically, in order to serve as a harbor for collectives who might be more targeted. And for instance, in the last year and a half in France, events in support of Palestine have been censored left and right. And universities have had to cancel talks, and movie theaters who depend on state subsidies have suffered political pressures. And so we wanted to have a space that would be safe from all of that. So I think there's no one strategy, but it's important to have legal spaces that we can fall back on when there's like a very active repression, as the one we're experiencing at the moment, for some collectives, some movements, some causes. So basically, we're all working in good intelligence with different strategies. Some underground, us, we opted like to use visibility as an armor. Basically, we used the media and we used very public, prominent supporters from the film industry in order to shield ourselves so that we can shield others.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Yeah. That's 100%.
And also, all of this really remains like in flux and very informed. Sorry, our clouds make us disappear sometimes. It really kind of is something that we're really paying close attention to. Like, these squat laws change. Immigration laws are changing every day. All these, the governments move swiftly as we also need to. And I think just staying informed and keeping in touch. We had a lot of great advice from a place in Belgium, Zimmerman. And just sort of checking in, how is it working elsewhere? I've done a lot of work personally with spaces in countries that are a lot more repressive and they have different strategies. And everyone's kind of just keeping an eye out. And yeah, these decisions are made based on what's possible at the time. And, hopefully this is the right strategy for the next couple years, decades, we hope. But of course, yeah, proceed with caution and care and great intel wherever you are, listeners.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, like you are the kind of activists we have on the show who don't need to like wear a balaclava and have an anonymous name, which like, that's I think you alluded to like other stuff that's underground. And I think that's that concept of do you use this, the demi-ground? Like some things are above and some things are below. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. On that, I did want to ask about La Claire in terms of it. I think you've kind of alluded to this anyway, like it being a used as a space, an organizing space for other organizations. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, about the kind of organizations that come? Obviously, you don't have to tell us everybody.
Well, it's not open yet. We're in the middle of construction, so it'll hopefully reopen in
Of
September.
course.
And then we are putting together a big group call to meet with as many organizations as possible that might be interested. I don't know, do you want to name names?
Well, for instance, we had events with Urgence Palestine that's at threat of being dissolved by the government at the moment. Like the French government has the power to dissolve nonprofits, and basically they're targeting anti-fascist and pro-Palestinian movements very strongly at the moment. Also, des activistes écolos.
Also environmentalists. There is the same process that's targeting Urgence Palestine right now, targeted the Soulèvement de la Terre. They won, and were not dissolved, but the process is very, very scary. Obviously, a big threat to just being able to organize and assemble, and of course, it's cloaked in charges of terrorism and all those kinds of things.
And so is that non-profit legal status, is that different to the foundational status that La Claire has?
Yes.
Okay.
These organizations can be movements. A lot of them aren't registered at all. Like I'm not even sure of the legal status of Urgence Palestine or the Soulèvement, but the government can sort of accuse a group of fomenting violence or whatever they want to accuse them of, and then it goes through this court process. In the case of Soulèvement, that wasn't successful, and in case of Urgence Palestine, we are waiting to see what the verdict will be.
And this basically declares people in the movement to be terrorists, as I understand it. I think Jay spoke to us a bit about La Soulèvement de la Terre and the process this went through, it's criminalizing participation in that movement, so then people are afraid to be in it.
I can't speak to the exact terms of it. I was just reading up on it today, and it's honestly quite confusing how they're using language.
Yeah, classic legalese.
Exactly. I think the term is like poses a threat to public order and safety. It's not terrorism per se, but that's the subtext, obviously.
So it's quite vague. It's like up for their own interpretation, of course. Yeah.
Right. And so obviously, those are groups that we want to support, and also a lot of the other organizations are I don't want to say like just regular film organizations, but a lot of it is just, any group that wants to show them. And I know there's workshops teaching kids to do 35 millimeter, innocuous, lovely, random kids. But also, there's hundreds, I think, of collaborators. So
yeah, because what we also are very attached to at like is not only being a space to harbor, to host, to welcome other political movements, but also just thinking of moviegoing and the collective experience of moviegoing as something political in itself. And we want to use, it's a huge space. That's why it took a lot of time to raise enough money, and the construction has taken a little under a year. It's like 900 square meters. So it's huge. There's 2 screening rooms, but there's also this huge space that we use as a cafe where we can also have assemblies, meetings, readings, workshops, etc. And so we're really trying to take advantage of that huge space in a part of Paris that's more and more moving towards insularity, you know, with very small apartments and less spaces where people can rally in and organize and just be together and have discussions. So we're really trying also to use film as an excuse to start a conversation and to have people who would never have met otherwise discuss. What I've grown acutely aware of, for instance, ever since I was involved at La Clé, it's obviously due to architectural constraints, but most movie theaters in Paris, when the door that leads you out of a screening room leads you directly onto the street, onto the sidewalk. And thank you for consuming a film, go home. And there's not a chance, you know, to engage with the people you've shared this experience with. And so we're working a lot on having film be in itself a collective experience. Every screening is different. That's something we didn't say. For the 2.5 years we occupied the space, it was a different film every night. We showed films only once because we relied on the solidarity of rights holder who would waive the fees to support the cause. And basically every night, the person who had chosen the film or the few people who had worked together to put the screening together did a little presentation. They told everyone that they were in a squad. People knew that they were basically that their very physical presence was an act of support and was a way to take a stand in order to defend the space. So people were very engaged in that way. And also they saw someone in front of them that was presenting a film and could project themselves basically doing the same thing. You know, they could envision themselves tomorrow sharing a film they like. And it creates a different relation, I think, to culture in general, to be able to see yourself as an actor, to see yourself as someone who can participate in it rather than just passively receive it. And I think, you know, to also, since we're focusing on marginalized, dissident, underrepresented voices through the films we choose to see, it's also a way to tell people you can have a voice and you can share the films that move you, that qui te soulève,
that make you want to do something about the
Yeah.
world. And
Oh yeah.
also, I mean, we all of the screenings that were co-hosted were, you know, there's always, you know, a post on the Instagram and on the website, and if y'all want to go scroll through, you can see kind of lots of the other organizations that we've worked with. Other way, but also that you can maybe find out about a movie that you don't know about, and a lot of them maybe you can find online, or maybe you can program somewhere near you. And yeah, definitely, please go dig in the archives. And
That's great. Yeah. I should have probably made this connection sooner because we interviewed the filmmaker on the show, but have you shown Belkaceb by Alexis de Loomis?
don't think we have.
Oh, well, you definitely should.
Let's get you in, let's get you in
it's
touch.
yeah, we should get you in touch with him. Basically, it's someone who fought in Rojava and made a documentary with footage that he filmed while he was there, and then went back again afterwards to see the autonomous region and interview people there. But that was a stray thought. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask about, I guess, like this kind of subaltern culture. I guess I'd just call it a theory because, like, in Britain, like our like activist culture is so lacking, and like
Yeah,
just like it's all like people do the stuff and then they go and do completely different things to relax. Like just they're completely disconnected, and it's very rare
go
to
to
have...
the pub and it's horrible. Everyone just gets drunk and it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah. But exactly, they go to other spaces that are nothing to do with movements or politics, or they won't even necessarily see the same people there. And I think that, like, my theory is that, like, burnout, when people like do too much and then they have to take such a long time to recover, is much worse if people can't be around the same people they would see in doing activism in the same kind of spaces and share the same social reality, I guess, because like that creates a sharp feeling of being like no longer in those social circles if you like aren't doing the same actions. That's my theory. I don't know if you have kind of reflections on like whether this culture like helps with burnout.
I mean, one lovely thing that I've noticed that actually, and kind of what Chloé was saying earlier, is there's already been this idea that it's going to be different people over time. And you come in and you give the time that's available to you, but also everyone's bringing in other people, like opening up the construction site, both for budget reasons, but also it's fun to build stuff together, is an opportunity that we're doing right now of just saying like, and by the way, if any listeners are in Paris and you want to sign up for a shift to come redo some walls, we're really kind of bringing in different people at different times in the hopes that more people, just like you were saying, will be like, oh wait, I could do this. I want to propose a movie. I have an idea. And we'll be like, great, come, this is how you would do it. Host your own screening. And it becomes a space, not just that like people can spend as much or as little time in as they want, but that kind of in its own nature is constantly bringing in different kinds of people who hopefully will stay. And I think that's super important in that, like you're saying, it doesn't split the world between activist space, the real world. It's just a place that you can be in without having to dedicate your entire life to it. But also if you do, that's cool. Like I'm sure there's people who are really gonna, stay the distance and stuff, but it's meant to be super porous and really, yeah, part of the neighborhood. You can come. If you're a super cinephile that has seen every single movie, you will find amazing things. If you've never seen a movie, that's also cool. And I think that's
If
really...
you're not interested in film at all and just like to, be behind the counter and serve beers, that's also very cool. If you want to learn how to use a projector, you can come and just do that. We're going to have like books available for people to just come in the space and, and hang out for as long as they want. It's just the idea of having that space that's, very easy to appropriate and to feel safe in. Whatever
Yeah.
contributions might be.
I was going to ask a question about the eviction because, one thing that we've sort of learnt about French police is that they're horrible, violent scum, just like most police forces, but they seem to be like particularly violent. When you had obviously the first resistance act was to put on this, what was it, 5 week long movie marathon, which is just... I've not said this yet, but I'm like a film loser. Like I'm a film nerd. Not in like the Marvel sort of Pulp Fiction cringe way, but I just love film and cinema and stuff. So like a 5 week movie marathon, this activism is literally like my dream heaven. But like, so that was the first sort of resistance act. And then when they actually came and did the eviction, did you resist any further? Were there any sort of barricades done, or did you just kind of go, no, you know what, we're going to come back. Let's just be smart about this. What was the kind of the vibe of the eviction?
Basically, we were warned the day before. Someone who knew someone from the Paris prefecture had learned that the eviction was going to be for the next day. So we knew we had little time to prepare. And basically what we decided to do was to split in half. Part of the collective was outside, like sleeping at friends' apartments nearby. But because we thought if things go bad and everyone goes into custody, everyone who's inside the cinema, we need to have people outside who have the freedom to raise awareness, to deal with lawyers, to contact and anyone we need to contact to get them out and to kind of create a counter protest. And 13 people stayed inside, and we told neither Kira nor I were inside, and we told them, you do whatever you decide. Basically, you're putting your bodies at risk. So you are absolutely free to decide whether you want to resist passively or whether you want to leave. And what they decided to do is when the police cracked the door open, they decided to come out with symbolic objects from the cinema and to not actively resist. That was their choice, but we hadn't closed the door on any more active resistance. It was... it was open. We have always dealt with diverging strategies. The collective is very heterogeneous in nature. People have different stories, different tactics, different capabilities, and things they feel comfortable or less comfortable with. So we've always, played things on different fields at once.
Well, yeah, it definitely wasn't coming from a critical perspective whatsoever. I think that that's a really important thing to share with people. Again, like, you know, a huge thing that we learned when we went to the ZAD is that a diversity of tactics is super important, and pragmatism is important as well. Like, you know, to be pure and demand purity and perfection is just so unrealistic, and it can be really dangerous and violent and traumatic for people. You know, if people are demanding that people really do put their bodies on the line against the police, you know, this is, you know, we already suffer quite a lot as activists, you know, through trauma. I was speaking to someone at the ZAD literally about, you know, the fact that capitalism itself, like the very way that we are in a capitalist system is traumatic, like that baseline trauma that we all have of like having to I guess like bargain for our own existence through selling our bodies, selling our labor, etc. So yeah, it's we can't be sat here like sort of criticizing people for various different strategies, unless those strategies are counter-revolutionary, which it certainly isn't. To retreat and come back is actually a pretty good strategy, generally speaking.
We go back to legalization. Reason why we've also thought this was a good strategy is because when you're in a state of legal precariousness, some people cannot access your space. They won't access your space. They won't dare come into a space where they know an eviction can happen.
Yes, exactly.
And so having a space that's legal, it also protects the people who might want to come in.
Especially like immigration status.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who would not be able to come if the cops can show up at any moment. And so that all those things factor into these decisions. And like Chloé was saying, it's like, you know, all the strategies are floated, and then we try to make the ones that will make sense for as many people as we want to welcome in.
Yeah, no, I can speak to this on some like personal experience. I volunteered at a place called the Harm Reduction Hub, and basically it works out of the offices of a big like charity nonprofit that helps drug users. And so like the office has or like the hub has an agreement from the local police to like not be a policed area, like so it can actually be helpful to be like so that people know they can come there. They have precarious immigration status, they're sex workers, they're drug users, they're homeless, and they know that they're not going to run into the police. Like there's no way that the police have said they won't come there anyway, you know.
Okay. I think I had one sort of like final sort of question that I wanted to ask myself. Oh no, we actually have two questions. Hang on a minute. No.
Yeah, go ahead with
no.
your question, then we'll do those. It's okay.
No. I think it makes sense to do these questions because these could be quite long.
Okay,
answers,
then our
first
question from the audience is from user What's Left After, who asked kind of a casual question. What are some of your favorite movies? Like what got you, you know, into cinema so much, and also, you know, have any of like your favorite movies inspired you in this moment or in the struggle?
Ooh, whoa, tough question.
Go ahead.
Let me think quick. I mean, I love process films that show you like how something happened. Like recently, there's a great documentary called Union about the Amazon workers organizing, and I mean, it's a beautiful film for a million reasons. But they really, the directors and the producers worked on it really showed how hard organizing is and how long it takes. And you really are in there in the meetings and the Zoom calls and the confrontations with all of the sort of Amazon labor propaganda people, where they try to like convince people to not join the union. And it's not a simple like this is how you do it and then it works. It really shows you how to get in the weeds, and they worked on it for a very long time. So that's one that's come to mind recently that like is very on topic. And yeah, I mean, I think I've learned, I work in art and documentary, and I learned so much about how this works from, you know, actually being there, but also just being able to see how these things play out in different places. It's so precious. I mean, of course, documentaries are edited and they condense time, but it's so much more visceral than, you know, reading a news article or seeing a headline or just hearing that the thing happened. There's so much going on at once that having a film that kind of pieces things together and takes you from A to Z. Yeah. Did you have time to think of any?
I did. it makes me think of a couple of things. First, I cannot recommend enough Medrondo's film. He's a Mauritanian director who's done incredible work in the 70s. And I discovered his films shortly before I went to La Clé as a spectator. Basically, when I began going to La Clé before the theater was even squatted, was after I'd discovered his film and wanted to learn more about African filmmakers, and I'm very partial to the films of the 60s and the 70s especially that try to undo the hierarchy, the traditional hierarchy of the crew and the hierarchy between the people who are behind the camera and the people who are in front of it. So, for instance, all the experimentation that Chris Marker and Bruno Muel did in the 70s with workers, teaching them how to use a movie camera, teaching them how to edit so that they could share their own stories and not always be subjects of someone else's point of view on their struggles. It is something that I'm um, very sensitive to. And the first programming I did at La Clé was 3 films. One is called La Charnière, Classe de lutte, et À bientôt, j'espère. So À bientôt, j'espère is a film that Marker and Marais did on workers that were striking in 67. Then La Charnière is a short audio file of the workers watching the film and telling Marker and his co-director, well, you've only shown the harshness of our struggles. You haven't shown the joy. You haven't shown how the women were involved. And Marker and Marais, hearing that, realized that they needed to put the means of production in the hands of the worker. And then they did a film called Classe de lutte, where they show, like, it's a portrait of a woman activist inside the factory, and it's full of joy and creativity, and it's done by the workers themselves, and that has kind of created a school of films that were made in the same way with the same process, and I'm very interested in that line.
That's so beautiful.
What was
Wow.
that? Classe de lutte?
Classe de lutte, yes.
Like struggle school.
Struggle school. Okay.
It's basically
Great.
the group of workers that was created was called Group Medvedkin, like the Russian director. So you can find
Gotcha.
online.
I love that. That's fantastic. Tim, shall we have the next question from the audience?
So, how did you come up with your strategies? Was it from research, personal brainstorming?
It was a bit of everything. It was brainstorming, reading, meeting with people, having friends come on board. You know, that one knows someone who's a specialist in crowdfunding. That one knows a friend who was at the ZAD and has a knowledge on how to put together a foundation with the model that we've talked about. You know, it's been various ways to come up with the strategy that we ended up using. But most of all, it's very long discussions, very long conversations.
Yeah.
You know, the collective, it's a work in progress all the time now, trying to hear everyone out and create the conditions where anyone can chip in and chime in and you know, share their 2 cents and share an idea that perhaps is going to grow and grow and grow and be shared by more and more people. Basically, we put almost as much work into maintaining the collective and creating a space where everyone feels welcome to intervene and to share an insight, as we do actually maintaining the theater and programming films and looking for money. Like it's a lot of work. It's a huge part of what we do, but it's what allows us to hold on.
Yeah, amazing. It actually it just popped into my mind. I remembered that there was, I think it was in Marseille, there was it was like a McDonald's that got squatted and taken over. Yeah, because we covered that on Red Planet. Like, I mean, this was like back in like 2020 or 21 or something like that.
2021, yeah.
I'm not sure what is currently going on there, but yeah. But so when you were coming up with these strategies and stuff, was there anywhere else that you saw that you were like, we want to be like these guys, or like they have a great thing going, anything like that?
I mean, speaking for us, I was in the United States when I saw this happening on the internet, and it was one of the things that made me want to come back here. Actually, was seeing that it was, getting this thing together. And there's a lot of organizing that's happening in France right now that seems like a new wave of energy that's coming from, like La Crème was a great example. People are really taking a lot of initiative to be like, well, we're just gonna do it now. Which, had been in France for a long time, maybe went dormant for a little bit, and then seems to be coming back in full force. And then, I mean, I was in New York before, and it's been kind of heartbreaking seeing a lot of spaces there close, and seeing a lot of, it's like a lot of independent bookstores, like Blue Stockings, or a lot of spaces that were very dear to me have been slowly closing. And so it's as much inspired by people who have done it, but also by places that haven't necessarily been able to hang on. But I'm trying to give like another good success story to share that's exciting.
Well, Lazad is the main one.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we got a whole documentary about that to come.
Well, actually, I don't know if you've talked about direct action on the podcast.
The film Direct Action.
Yes.
No.
We've not spoken about it. We should hear about it. Yep.
This is one of the films we've shown in the 4 days. After we managed to buy the cinema, we had a 4-day festival to celebrate with the audience, and that was one of the films we showed. And it's extremely interesting. It's a 3-hour documentary, and basically it's like 20 shots that are stills, not stills. Comment dire un plan séquence?
Like it's one long take.
Okay, yeah.
One is, yeah.
And it's basically just people, chopping wood or making bread for 100 people. And basically it's one of the rare films on Lazad that hasn't put like the confrontation with the police in the forefront, but basically has found an interest in what goes on after, and how that new chapter is still a fight, is still a struggle. And basically people are trying to reclaim a time that's not only geared toward productivity. They're trying to own their time, to create a space where everyone feels welcome. And I found it so interesting that the director had this approach of basically stating, this is still fighting. You might not be directly in clash with the police, but you're still building a counter model. You're still building a utopia in action. Like you're still doing a lot for an alternative to exist. And it's as difficult because it demands patience, it demands tenacity. It's as difficult, even though it's different from the previous state of Notre-Dame-des-Landes, like the hot struggle and that cold, tenacious moment that they're now in. And I feel like that's a good inspiration for what La Clé, I hope, will be. It at the end of the film, we show how the people who are now living on Notre-Dame-des-Landes and having this slow life are still putting their resources towards helping the people at Sainte-Soline, at Les Soulèvements de la Terre, for the new struggle that's opened in another area of France. And I hope La Clé can be, this space at base arrière. How would you translate that?
A base arrière. It can be like an everything space that
a headquarter,
a meeting point, and a blueprint, honestly, for anyone who's trying to do what we're doing. Like they're really excited to pass it forward and to help anyone who's trying to do the same thing, not even necessarily like in a movie theater, any kind of space, cultural space, organizing space, to, say like, this is how we did it. We can show our homework. This is like all the steps, all the people it took, what the meetings look like, and to really have that be as replicable and to, support, mentor, help as many other spaces. Like that's kind of our utopian vision, that any place that wants to do this can do this. And that's on the support that we got.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing about what you were describing from direct action, like it's very much in line with the philosophy of our show. We like set homeworks for our viewers, and like several times over the homework has been like, please just like cook for your comrades, please like do the dishes at your union meeting, because like this is valuable labor that gets devalued by patriarchy as women's work, right? And I don't know that we don't have like hour-long one single take shots for our documentary, but we definitely have focused on the cold struggle or the ongoing yeah, I mean what you're describing. Like one of the Zaddists we interviewed talked about like a virtuous cycle between the support network of places like the Zad that are liberated and the communities that are liberated that way, and the hot struggle and the way that they feed into each other. And I think like the first time we visited, we were expecting to go there and then tell the story of the clashes with police. And then when we saw what the space of the Zad is, we realized we had to make something longer, which was about, that aspect instead. But speaking of homework that we set our viewers, you have written some really good homework for our viewers. I'm really excited about it. So please tell us tell the audience what their homework is this week.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, well, basically share films, start conversations, use the collective moments of people gathering around a projector to foster community engagement, community participation. Start a film club, even at your place. Just use it as an opportunity to gather people and to create a moment of discussion, conversation, coming together, sharing even clashing beliefs and points of view. Advocate for the creation of a open programming slot at your local theater. Many are experimenting with that in Paris now, to have this slot that's participatory where audience members can suggest a film and present it and be basically ambassadors for the theater and try to gather people around a film, a topic that they feel passionate about. So yeah, we've used film as a tool, but for some of us in the collective, film has become secondary in a way, and what matters most is having that common space and time where ideas can emerge and friendships can be born and comrades can try to think of ways to act together more efficiently or with more joy than they have so far. And there are many other tools than films to achieve that. So if film doesn't speak to you, use something else, but basically try and create moments of collective life, basically.
Yeah,
That's such good homework. I love that. Thank you so much.
A slight
yeah.
plug. If you happen to be rich in time and you're in Paris, definitely get in touch if you want to come help us paint and build out space or cook or hang out. And if you're rich in money, we are also short for the fundraising. So we're still working on that. Definitely get in touch if you are secretly rich or not secretly rich.
Well, my girlfriend and I are going to be in Paris sometime later this year, so hopefully we can come and help paint a wall or something. But yeah, if there are places that people can go online to donate, please tell our audience that as well.
Definitely. We have two links. One is in France and one is in the United States. And we can share those.
The links along with all the sources for our news stories will be in the description of the podcast if you're listening to the podcast later or the pod. Yeah, I guess so. Also, any other plugs or shout outs to other like activist stuff that you want to talk about? I know I have one actually, is the
I'm trying to stickers.
Oh no. A lot of this has been reminding me of the Prince Charles Cinema in London, in central London. Is like I've been like, it's not, I don't think it's nearly as radical in its programming as La Clef is, but like I have certainly been to like events there that are like showing trans history. There's an event called Tea Girls on Film, which is like showing old films that have like trans women in. It's a really lovely community event for trans women in London, and it's currently going through a kind of similar, like process and currently fundraising. So my shout out would be check out the Save the Prince Charles Cinema campaign. I don't know if either of you have any other like wider shout outs or plugs.
Well, we know that in the Kinoclimates networks, some other venues are actually trying to fundraise to buy their space. Cinema Nova has a fundraiser open, Le Cercle du Laveux in Belgium as well. So check out Kinoclimates and you'll see everywhere across Europe great spaces that need support or that are just really incredible venues to go and check out.
And the Lumino here in Paris too. And I mean, honestly, wherever you are, if you are lucky enough to be near a cinema, help it keep going. And if not, start one.
Thank you. Okay. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Solidarity.
Good night.
Bye. Great.
Yeah, that's it. That's the show. What a great pair of guests.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna make efforts to check out Le Clef when I'm in Paris. So, what remains is to remind everyone that our show is supported by Patreon, and our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/red_planet. There are various different tiers, that you can get different kinds of rewards at. You can also get our merch at mercenarycreative.com, the tote bags, hoodies. We should be getting some new designs in. We're in talks to come up with some new designs soon. We have at least one idea right now. But the highest tier of support on our Patreon, which again is patreon.com/red_planet, is our sicko mode tier. And the reward there is that you'll get a personal thanks on the end of every show, which looks like this. Thank you, Risk Inverse, for being our sicko. You make
Thank
this show
you.
possible. So please do support the show if you can, because we want to keep on doing this show. We want to keep on doing bigger projects like the documentary. Your support makes absolutely all the difference. And after that, it's just to let people know where they can find more Tim.
For the real Tim heads out there, and I know there's a couple of you, you can find me on YouTube and Twitch as Conquest of Dread, or you can find me on Twitter or Blue Sky as Dread Conquest. And yeah, if you're into tabletop RPGs and stuff, you can check out on Twitter Dark RPG 2000. It's a little project I've been working on for a while now that is almost ready to come out. It's like a dark future anti-capitalist tabletop game sort of thing. It's really fun. That is nearing completion. But what about Mule? Where can we find out more about Mule?
Get me at trying to stop my cat from tearing my walls down.com. No, sorry, I'm just getting distracted. So you can get me at linktree.ee/DJ Mule. That's DJ MUEL. I'm planning on getting some streaming on the go soon because I've been employed for so long. I've got fuck all money. Please consider donating to my PayPal or my Patreon. It's patreon.com/DJ MUEL. I would much prefer a sort of consistent sub on my Patreon. It's a one-off donation, and you can do that at any kind of amount. I think I offer from like £3 to like £50 or something. I can't remember, or £30. So yeah, please consider doing that. And Soph, what about you?
Well, as a personal favor to me, audience members can go and check out all of Mule's links at linktree.ee/DJ Mule. I really want you to support my friend and make so he can pay his bills and his rent. It's very important to me. And also check out his streams because they are really good and really, really fun when he does stream. So if he's streaming, tune in. I love Mule streams. If you are interested in my stuff, it is a great time to join my Patreon because I have a big video coming out. It's about the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson. It's one of the inspirations for why I call myself Sophie from Mars, because it's a utopian story of like communism created like by the expanse and like curiosity and effort for discovery and truth by humankind. It's a very like beautiful utopian story, and like there isn't usually much kayfabe to my YouTube channel, but when I do like play the channel lore a little bit, it's that like I'm kind of from that Mars. So like it's an important essay to me, like talking through this series and getting more people into it. And I've been like working on visuals for it by like building stuff in Kerbal Space Program to show the stuff that happens in the books. And I've been doing astrophotography with my telescope. And I actually went to the Science Museum and filmed last week. So like I'm really excited about this video, and that's going to be going up like in the next few weeks, and it's gonna be really good. So check out my Patreon, and all my links are at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. There's also my Substack there, my Blue Sky, my Tumblr, etc. So please follow me on all the stuff. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week with some news. Bye.
See ya.